The old woman only picked a single red chili pepper, but a few drops of black liquid suddenly fell from the sky. She looked up in curiosity, and discovered that black rain was falling from the sky. The entire sky was covered by dark clouds, and it wasn't just here. Other places around the world also started experiencing black rain. A taxi driver was still complaining that the weather forecast was wrong, but the next moment huge hailstones began falling from the sky. Looking closely you could see the hailstones were shaped like twisted human faces. Meanwhile, the Guanyin statue inside a temple started shedding 2 streams of black blood tears, and all of this began after villagers discovered a Buddha head while building a road. Strangely, the Buddha's eyes were covered with a piece of cloth, and the cloth was covered with mysterious symbols. The monks at the temple warned them not to dig it out, saying it was a ghost Buddha, a relic from the late Goryeo period that had been buried underground for more than 600 years. No one knew its true origin, but according to historical records, when this ghost Buddha appeared centuries ago, everyone who saw its eyes experienced strange changes to their bodies. But the villagers were only thinking about getting rich. They wanted to turn the statue into a tourist attraction. The village chief felt the cloth covering the Buddha's eyes ruined its appearance, so he ordered workers to remove it after digging out the statue. Little did they know a disaster was already approaching. The next morning the Buddha statue was successfully excavated. Following the village chief's order, the driver cut off the cloth covered in symbols. A crow landed on top of it. Crows were considered unlucky creatures. Seeing it sitting on the Buddha's head made the driver uncomfortable. He picked up a water hose and tried to chase the crow away, but the crow kept circling around and refused to leave. The driver didn't think much of it, and then drove the statue back to the village. Just as he was about to make a turn, he encountered a taxi. He quickly accelerated and passed it, forcing the taxi to stop suddenly. At that moment a gust of wind lifted the cloth covering the statue. The man's eyes met the Buddha's eyes directly, and his expression instantly became strange. That night the driver successfully delivered the statue to the village. Because of the rain he stopped at a nearby bar to rest. As soon as he sat down he felt his eyes becoming dry and irritated, as if something was stuck inside them. So he went to the bathroom to wash them, but it still didn't get better. Just then the door opened. It was the bar owner. But when the driver turned around he saw his father, who had been dead for years. Terrified, he rushed out of the bathroom. The customers nearby asked what happened, but he pushed them away in fear. Then he saw his dead father again, and at that moment his eyes had already turned completely white. He collapsed to the ground in terror. The next second the old man began showing him a terrifying smile. Overcome with fear he grabbed a bottle and smashed it toward him. Then he started brutally beating him. 2 customers desperately tried their best to pull him away, while the bar owner lay on the ground barely alive. Only then did he finally come back to his senses. The person he almost beat to death wasn't his dead father, it was the bar owner. And the same thing happened to the taxi driver who had looked into the Buddha's eyes. His eyes turned completely white. It seemed he was also suffering from hallucinations. After the Buddha head was excavated, the 2 monks from the temple found the brothers Young Ki-hoon, who had deep knowledge of ancient Buddha statues. The monks told them that the Buddha head was a ghost Buddha created to suppress evil spirits, and once it appeared in the world again it would bring disaster. The 2 monks showed them photos of the ghost Buddha and asked Young Ki-hoon to investigate the meaning of the symbols on the cloth. Young Ki-hoon took a look and realized they were Tibetan characters, but the exact meaning was still unknown. After returning home he immediately began his investigation. The cloth covering the Buddha head contained several letters. He had no idea what they meant, so he could only write them down first. Then he looked through a book about East Asian Buddhist art research. The author's name was Li Sujin. She was his wife, and also an ancient Buddha researcher. Her greatest skill was interpreting images and texts. Because of their daughter's accidental death, the 2 were currently separated. Young Ki-hoon sent the information to his wife through email. Sujin opened the email, and immediately saw the Buddha head with its eyes covered. She copied the symbols onto a piece of paper, and read one of the characters as heart. She didn't know what it represented. Because she missed her daughter so much she stopped decoding further. Meanwhile, a female police officer received a call from her colleague, saying someone had gotten into a fight in the village. When she arrived at the station she found it was Won-hee. Since they were from the same village everyone knew each other. Her colleague said he had beaten up the bar owner. The female officer couldn't believe it, because he was known as an extremely honest person. But when she turned around she saw Won-hee's eyes had completely turned white. He kept shouting, "Dad, don't come closer." Then he suddenly started foaming at the mouth, and became completely silent. She carefully walked over to check on him, but he suddenly regained consciousness and rushed toward her. Everyone was shocked by this sudden scene. He desperately tried to break free, and ended up tearing his own arm off. The female officer quickly stepped forward and restrained him. Then she called an ambulance and rushed him to the hospital. Even the medical staff had never seen a patient like this before, because black rain and hail had fallen all night. The villagers began cleaning the dirt off their crops, causing some economic losses. Since it was a natural disaster, the government would provide compensation. Sujin originally didn't plan to come, but a village woman insisted on bringing her here. She discovered that a promotional poster for the Buddha head was displayed outside the government office. Everyone had treated it as the village's lucky mascot, because it had attracted a large number of tourists. Thinking about the information her husband sent her, she rushed into the exhibition hall to take a look. She discovered it was exactly the same Buddha head from the photos. The only difference was that the cloth covering its eyes had been removed, while the cloth had been placed in another display case. Sujin stared at the Buddha head for a while. She felt that its eyes did not look like they were looking down on all living beings with compassion. Instead, they revealed a sense of coldness and contempt. Meanwhile, young Ki-hoon still couldn't figure out the meaning of the symbols, but he was certain that these symbols were a type of barrier spell, and it was a layered seal, which was why it was so difficult to decipher. Based on this result, the monk suspected that the ghost Buddha used its eyes to confuse people. The young monk beside him said they needed to tell the villagers immediately, but the elder monk sighed helplessly. If they were people who listened to warnings, they would never have dug up the ghost Buddha. The only thing they could do now was go to the village and find out what happened. Just then the abbot called him. The elder monk went to the office. At that moment the abbot was reading a book while making coffee. The abbot called him there to tell him to stop investigating the ghost Buddha. The elder monk was shocked, because logically the abbot should understand the danger of the ghost Buddha better than anyone. The elder monk worried that the exhibition would bring unimaginable disaster, but instead he was scolded by the abbot. The abbot told him not to embarrass him. He even assigned him a new task to stop him from going to the village to investigate. On his way back, the elder monk discovered that all his junior monks were running out of the temple in fear. He immediately rushed inside to check, only to find the guanyin statue shedding 2 streams of blood tears. It was clearly a sign of great disaster. Meanwhile, the government was holding a Buddha head presentation. The villagers were discussing the strange black rain from last night, but Sujin noticed a strange person. The person was sitting there without moving at all. Looking closer, she realized it was the delivery man who had hit and killed her daughter. She immediately rushed out of the hall and called her husband.
응?
회기사 그 사람 감옥에서 나왔냐고.
But her husband said that was absolutely impossible. He had been sentenced to life imprisonment. At that moment she felt someone approaching, but when she opened the door there was no one there. She quickly returned to the hall and found that the delivery man had disappeared. Could everything she saw just now have been an illusion? Just then the county chief walked in. Seeing the mayor arrive, the villagers rushed forward asking how the government would compensate their crops. But no one noticed a person holding a sickle standing in the distance. His eyes had turned white just like the taxi drivers. A villager who knew him walked over and asked what was wrong, but in the next second he swung the sickle at him. Seeing this, all the villagers began running away. At that moment Sujin saw the delivery man again. Her eyes became slightly dazed, but when the scene changed, the delivery man had turned into the sickle killer. The disaster had begun. When the villagers escaped from the exhibition hall, they found chaos outside. The drivers on the road and the man who jumped from the building had all changed, and without exception they had all seen the Buddha head's eyes. These people rushed toward the crowd like they had lost their minds, because in their eyes everything they saw was an illusion. The entire street looked like a living hell. The gang leader, who had just been released from prison, was strangely excited by the scene. His men quickly took the mayor away to escape, but they realized the car keys were missing. The fear caused his illness to suddenly flare up. His subordinate quickly brought him his emergency medicine, but they failed to notice that the female assistant beside them had started acting strangely. She kept rubbing her eyes non-stop. Clearly she had also looked directly at the Buddha head. Her eyes slowly turned white. Even her breathing became rapid and heavy. She unconsciously picked up a pen from the clipboard. Then she removed the cap and stabbed the pen into the nearest man's neck. The man stood there in shock for several seconds before realizing what happened. The mayor's asthma instantly disappeared from the shock. Just as the female assistant was about to attack again, an uncle suddenly appeared and stopped her. At this moment Sujin was completely frozen in place. Luckily the uncle came over and pulled her away. The survivors began running toward the exhibition hall. The entire street had already become a battlefield of hell. Seeing a student pinned down by one of the Buddha victims, she broke free from the uncle and rescued him. The two quickly ran toward the hall. Everyone desperately held the door shut, but at that moment several Buddha victims rushed inside. They had incredible strength. Even with so many people pushing back, they couldn't hold them off. The unlucky mayor was knocked down and grabbed by the ankle. Just then the gang leader appeared. He grabbed the Buddha victim by the hair and dragged him out of the hall. Then he began attacking him violently, until the opponent completely stopped moving. Everyone inside the hall was stunned by what they saw. The Buddha victims they feared so much looked like prey in his eyes. The mayor didn't even dare let him inside. However, he had several gang members with him. They could completely control the situation. The survivors were now trapped inside the exhibition hall. The gang leader had naturally become the boss here. Even the mayor could only obey him. Everyone then worked together to block the door and prevent the Buddha victims from breaking in. However, at that moment, Sujin saw the delivery man who had killed her daughter again. Obviously it was another hallucination, and there was only one possible explanation. She had also been affected by the Buddha head. From what happened earlier we know she stared into the Buddha head's eyes for a long time. As for why she wasn't affected as quickly as the others, perhaps everyone's willpower was different. The young man noticed something was wrong with her. Soon everyone's phones received a message. It was a disaster warning alert. The mayor told everyone that receiving this message meant the government already knew what was happening here. Rescue teams would arrive soon. All they needed to do now was wait quietly. But why had those people suddenly turned into madmen attacking citizens everywhere? The mayor had no idea how to answer that question. The gang leader stepped forward and said it was obviously because of yesterday's black rain. That rain was extremely strange. There might be some unknown virus hidden inside the rain causing everyone to go insane. Just then Sujin, who had been trapped in her hallucination, suddenly collapsed to the ground. Immediately everyone turned their attention toward her. The gang leader instantly decided she was infected and needed to be dealt with. After saying that, he went back to get his weapon. The young man who had been saved by Sujin quickly stepped forward to stop him. Soon several gang members rushed forward trying to restrain him, but they never expected him to be incredibly skilled in combat. One gang member after another was knocked down while trying to grab him. The gang leader stepped forward and said she was no longer human. Looking at the citizens who were coldly watching from the side, he angrily questioned what they were doing. Someone was trying to kill another person and yet nobody stepped forward to stop it. Hearing this, the gang leader just laughed. With a fierce look in his eyes, he walked toward him, saying that he would take responsibility for everything. Then he walked toward Sujin and prepared to kill her.
영지야! 하지마.
It turned out the two of them knew each other. Meanwhile, the military had already sealed off the entire area. No one was allowed to enter. Jae-hoon, who came looking for his wife, was stopped outside the barricade. The female police officer was also blocked outside. She could only call her wife on the phone, not knowing that the other person was already lying on the ground barely conscious. The gang leader gave up on killing her. He angrily threw away his weapon and walked away from the crowd. The young man walked over to Sujin and answered the phone.
저는 한도경이라고 하는데요. 아줌마가 갑자기 쓰러지셔서.
쓰러졌다고? 수진이가 쓰러졌어요?
자, 한도경 씨, 침착하게.
When the police officer heard the name Han Doo-kyung, she immediately walked over. Then she grabbed the phone from him.
도경? 도경이니?
엄마?
The police officer learned about the situation there through her son, but the road was currently blocked by the military and she couldn't get there. However, she knew a small path that could bypass the blockade. For the sake of finding their loved ones, the two decided to cooperate. The mayor comforted everyone and told them not to worry. The police would arrive soon, but at that moment the gang leader interrupted them. He asked who had been exposed to the black rain yesterday. The next second, someone raised their hand. He immediately ordered his men to tie that person up, because anyone who was hit by the black rain could possibly mutate. For their own safety, everyone agreed and tied up all those who raised their hands. The gang leader ordered one of his men to watch over them. If anything unusual happened, they should kill them immediately. Those people insisted they were innocent, and they were not monsters. But in the face of disaster, human nature becomes greatly exposed. The difference in strength creates a divide between the powerful and the weak. The strong gain absolute control over the situation, even deciding whether the weak live or die. Meanwhile, the disaster outside continued. The Buddha victims attacked those who failed to escape with weapons in their hands. They had completely lost their minds, because the government still had not figured out the truth. They could only send troops to block and isolate the area. They had not yet organized a rescue operation. After seeing the news reports, even those who refused to believe it had no choice but to accept the truth. Without rescue, they would only be trapped here and die. The uncle suggested that everyone break out together. His bus is parked right outside. It is big enough to fit everyone here, but the gang leader argued, what if they run into those crazies on the way? However, if the mayor agrees to let him kill them all, then he would not mind giving it a try. The mayor was left speechless for a moment. After all, they still had no idea whether those people could be saved, if they actually could be saved, but he ordered them to be killed anyway. He could very likely end up behind bars. At this moment, we can see Sujin's eyes have already started turning white. This is the sign that she is about to become one of the Buddha victims. Meanwhile, Jae-hoon and the female police officer were driving toward the area, but Jae-hoon suddenly stopped when they passed a farmhouse. He noticed a puddle of water on the ground from last night's black rain. After staring at it for a while, he reached out to touch it. The female police officer quickly stopped him, because the news said the black water contained some unknown virus.
어제 뭐 이상한 현상 같은 거 없었어요?
The female police officer suddenly remembered the human-faced hail from last night.
우박이 같이 내렸는데
우박? 그 사람 얼굴처럼 생기지 않았어요?
It seems he knows something. Just then a crow suddenly appeared. Crows were believed to be signs of bad omens, but Jae-hoon clearly remembered there were no crows here moments ago. As that crow flew away, more and more crows came rushing over. This showed that the disaster was far more complicated than it seemed. The two quickly ran inside the house. During the escape, one of the crows scratched Jae-hoon's cheek. Luckily, it did not hit his eyes. Although they successfully hid inside the room, the crows had no intention of letting them go. They kept smashing into the windows. Jae-hoon suspected these crows had also been affected by the Buddha head. Soon the window was completely shattered. The crows flew into the room one after another. Jae-hoon told the female officer to hold them off. He ran to find a bag of white sugar and poured it all over the table. He spread out the sugar and started drawing strange symbols on it. The two quickly hid under the table. The next second, something unbelievable happened. The crows flew straight over them as if they could not see them at all. The strange symbols Jae-hoon drew seemed to create a barrier that isolated them. This made the female officer even more curious about his identity.
설명을 좀 해주든가.
He explained that the so-called strange rain was still a type of rain. This black rain was what people called strange rain, and the reason it appeared was because an evil presence had emerged. So the heavens sent a warning. In other words, the black rain was a warning from the gods. So this disaster was not caused by the black rain. Meanwhile, the elder monk had been ordered by the abbot to stop investigating, but he secretly continued the investigation with the younger monk. Soon they made a discovery. It turned out the Buddha head was originally a normal statue. It was only used to seal away an evil spirit. That evil spirit was named Guan. It once hid inside lakeside Wagian temple pretending to be a monk. Because of its countless crimes it was beheaded, yet even without a head it continued wandering around the temple. Eventually a high priest used the Buddha head to seal it away. It could manipulate people's minds and make them hate each other, until they eventually killed one another. Because the cloth covering the Buddha head's eyes was taken away by the villagers, the seal was broken, and the evil spirit was released to wreak havoc again. Normal methods no longer worked against it. The only way was to gather all the monks and seal it again. Meanwhile Jaehoon and the female officer decided to escape from the house. After all, hiding here forever was not a solution. The two counted down 1, 2, 3 and rushed outside. The moment they left the barrier the crows immediately surrounded them. Before getting into the car Jaehoon grabbed some mud mixed with black rainwater. Then he drew symbols on the car. That way the crows would not attack the vehicle. Finally the two set off again. Meanwhile there were no more sounds of people killing each other on the street. Bodies were scattered all over the ground. Many of them were nearby villagers.